This is the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, the biggest, most fun podcast in the galaxy. We're Adina, Brian, Cris, and Steve, and we love talking all things science fiction. This is Season 4, but our human adventure is just beginning as we gather around our computer consoles to discuss the science fiction of film, television, and literature. Join us on our quest for fun and fascination as we go where no podcast has gone before. Everyone has permission to come aboard the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, but make sure to find your seat fast because we're taking off in 3, 2, 1, hit it. This podcast is a part of the Trek Geeks Network.
Greetings and hello. Welcome to another episode of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, the show where we get together with our friends and have really deep and fun conversations about all things sci-fi. Today, I want to talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, and it's a classic movie, Ghostbusters, and hopefully Ghostbusters 2. Now, I know it's not actually sci-fi, but I think because of the science in it and some of the technology that they use, makes it sci-fi-ish. So I thought, you know what? Why not talk about it? And joining me today are my usual fantastic co-hosts, Adina Mignona.
Hello. Who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters! Or
sorry,
He-Man.
I wanted to be the first person to say that. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. And Brian Donahue.
Yo, 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 yo. What's up, everybody?
It's a classic. And of course, Steve Merkin.
I'm going to say one of my favorite lines from Ghostbusters. Do, re, egon. And then the wink.
Yep.
I love that.
I can't do the wink because I can't wink, but I appreciate it.
Oh, facts about Chris Fox right here on the.
I can't wink. Podcast. I can blink. No problem. You asked me to blink. Okay. I can do it.
You can blink.
I can't wink. But so I wanted to go around and just get everyone's overall thoughts on Ghostbusters.
I'll start. I saw it when it first came out in the theater, so I saw it when it was first run in 1983, and I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. I thought it was delightful. You've asked the question, is it scary? The question is no. It was hilarious. And might I say, some of great music in that film and great songs that were written by one band that I truly loved, the Bus Boys. And that's where one of the songs appeared in. So I've always enjoyed it. I've always loved it. And it was fun watching it again. Let's put it that way.
Well, cool.
Adina?
No, I can go next.
Okay.
So yeah, similar to Steve, I remember watching it when it came out in the theater, although I was a little bit younger. I was, I think, probably 9 when it came out. So I was a kid. I remember it not being scary. I remember it being fun. And I remember being gaga over the theme song and a couple of the characters. And just, I remember it being part of the pop culture at the time. Like everyone knew it, everyone saw it. And I have this memory also, because that was the days that we would have sleepovers with my friends, and where you would go to the video store and you'd rent 2 or 3 movies. And the idea of the sleepover, the whole purpose was to just watch a couple of videotapes at night and possibly sometimes watch them like multiple times. And I feel like for a while, for like a good year or 2 or 3, Ghostbusters was part of that, like a regular rotation in like rewatching. So I have positive memories from childhood surrounding Ghostbusters. Rewatching it's a little harder, and honestly, to prepare for this, I didn't rewatch the first one because I felt like I kind of know it pretty well, but I did rewatch the second one.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Well, and by the way, when I say rewatch, I couldn't completely remember if I'd ever seen the second one fully through.
Interesting.
So maybe it wasn't a rewatch. I don't know, but that one didn't hold up as well.
Interesting.
In my opinion.
Okay. I think that's like the consensus, generally speaking, is that first one is a classic. Everybody loves it. The second one, not so popular.
Okay.
I will disagree with you on that.
I mean, I love the second one. I will defend it.
Yeah, me too.
I love it.
I love it.
Okay.
And I've got both on DVD, not Blu-ray, but DVD. and I watched both of them again, and I just remembered there were so many good points in the second one that makes it so well. Especially,
I'm looking forward to hearing those good points because I'm not sure I can pick
one
many
word.
out.
Okay.
Janusz.
I love Janusz. He's hysterical. But the thing is about Janusz is I can't. It's funny because now you can't imitate his accent because it's a really racist accent of whatever he's trying to be. But it's so funny. I love it. But Brian, you got to share your thoughts.
So
you warned us ahead of time that we might not.
Listen, I was not a Ghostbusters. I did never watch Ghostbusters until recently. Okay, and I'm glad I didn't until recently. And I need to explain this a little bit because I don't want to be overly harsh. Okay, just for the sake of being entertaining on a podcast. Okay. Ghosts aren't my thing. Movies about ghosts aren't my thing. I tend to I don't care. No, not going to do that. So that's one part of it. Okay. It's just a personal thing. I don't like zombies. Like the only zombie movie I've ever really enjoyed or cared to watch was World War Z with Brad Pitt. I really enjoyed that one. I thought that was thoughtful and provocative. That being said, I understand the nostalgia with the first Ghostbusters movie for sure. One of the greatest themes of all time as far as popular music, of course, you hear that song and people still go gaga over it. They still love it.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. I mean, it is catchy. It's poppy. It's how can you not like the song? And of course, the cast is pretty great. Hilarious. I do think the movie is funny. I'm never gonna watch this film again though. So that's kind of a scale we have on how we like films. When would we watch it again? And this is when I'm not gonna put it on the level of, dare I mention, Starship Troopers or Moonfall.
I was gonna ask Moonfall scale. Where does it lie?
But I will say, now I know what it's all about, and I'm moving on with my life. But that being said, I totally get why this film is considered a classic. It was totally different too.
It was very new, yeah. At the time,
totally
it was
different
very
from anything
new.
else in its age. So,
and it was comedy. It was not just a ghost. It was mostly comedy.
It was comedy, yeah.
Don't cross the streams, and that's the thing is. And I remember as a kid.
See, I'm laughing. I mean, I
remember we used those lines. Those. They infiltrated pop culture for a long time, and to some degree, I think they're still there.
Oh, the toys, the music! I remember seeing it, even though I never saw it. It was all over television. I remember the cartoons being out. I didn't watch it, but I remember that. So it's everywhere. It is everywhere. So
here's the truth. This happened last year when I was volunteering at Children's Hospital. There was a mom and boy, and the boy was walking around with the goggles that Dan Aykroyd had for night vision goggles. And I said, "Oh, Ray Stantz." He goes, "I'm not Ray Stantz. I'm Egon." I went, "Whoa, okay."
He knows his stuff.
He knew who his characters were.
That's pretty cool.
That's fantastic.
And again, when you think of it, watching it for the first time and you're rewatching it the second time, you can see that, the budget, what they were doing in special effects weren't as up as in Ghostbusters 2. But really, I mean, they've established something that had legs that they were able to make the second film. And then the all-girls film from I think 2016. And then they've got they had the other one come out, Ghostbusters Afterlife with Paul Rudd, and that's actually a very sweet film.
I want to see that. I want to see.
I liked it. I had issues with it with what they did with Egon, but I overall enjoyed the movie.
Well, they had to handle the fact that he passed away as a real person, and but the fact that they brought Dan Aykroyd back and they made it a personal story, and it was set off in a different thing. I can understand that. They had a lot more money to work with for special effects, but it still had that same feel that when you saw, let's put it this way, when you see Ecto-1, the car, it's like seeing the Millennium Falcon again.
It's up there. Yeah.
That's interesting.
The car. That is what Ghostbusters is.
And even the plot points, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of good callbacks.
Mhm.
But I have to say, like, what was really fun, I'll give you my origin. So I didn't get to see it in theaters because I was not born yet.
Yeah.
But I do. This is a food story, which is shocking for most people.
Right.
Like I would never ever associate
Marshmallows
food.
were marshmallows involved, or the Pillsbury Doughboy Pillsbury products?
I really wish they were, but they were not, because it was probably at a sleepover. But for whatever reason, we didn't watch it at night. But we woke up in the morning and we watched the first one, had waffles, whatever, and then I can't remember who did it, but one of our friends or maybe the parents were like, "Do you want to watch the second one?" And it's like, "Yeah, we have permission to watch 2 movies in a row? Let's do it." And then saw the second one, fell in love with it, and then watched it on and off. But then I got in around 2005, I got my PlayStation Portable, PSP, which is a PlayStation handheld. And around that time, Sony came out with UMD, the Universal Media Disc. And I bought Ghostbusters 2 on it, and then I just watched it all the time, fell in love with it, and just memorized every line. But it was interesting watching it for the rewatch. I was showing it to Dill for the first time, and she liked them both and was like, she was really surprised at how much she liked it, even though it was dated. And there's some things that she didn't love about the first one, but overall she's like, oh, I can see why this is a classic. I definitely get that vibe.
So what about the second one is appealing? Because there are so many things that were not.
Well, okay, so can I answer? Like,
go ahead.
Things
Go ahead.
I love.
Go ahead, Christian. You
like,
can
I would
talk
say,
about it.
For me, where the second one falls off is closer to the end. I didn't love the Statue of Liberty stuff, but I felt like there's so many great. Like, I love the courtroom scene, and I love this idea that the Ghostbusters
the courtroom scene's great.
Save the world from this unimaginable evil, and then they end up getting sued by what is it? They get sued by every city, county agency in New York, and I think that's hysterical. And I'm surprised. Like, I knew that Dill would like this line, but she just, like, if I just mention I turned into a dog, she just burst out laughing. Like Lewis's delivery of, but one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you. And he sits back down is great. I love the even though it's not from the first one, I love the 2 in the bag, ready to go. We be fast and they be slow. That's and good. The music I think is good. I thought a lot of it was funny. But I think like where it falls apart is probably the third act. I don't think is as strong because it does feel like it's very much the first movie. And then of course Janosch. I think Janosch for me makes the movie.
From the moment he shows up.
Janosch is fun, but
that was particularly bad.
I think I got set off on the wrong foot because Bill Murray's character, so Peter Venkman, was like 3 times more annoying in this film than he was in film 1.
Really?
And I think that's where it started. Because in film 1, it was cute. He was cute. But in this, he kept going and going, and he wouldn't shut up with the annoyingness, especially talking to Dana
Barrett.
Yeah, it was just like I wanted to slap him.
That actually leads into my 7th question, but like we can get into this because I mean that was for me I felt like Bill Murray is more likable in the second one because he's not constantly hitting on Dana.
Well, see, I felt that's like, the opposite.
But he's hitting on Dana from like the first moment he meets her. There's no reason for him to be doing that. Like the bedroom comment.
Yeah, but I think like, in the first movie though, it was like almost like one hit a scene. Where in the second movie, it felt like in a scene, he's not letting up.
Okay. See, I would say in the apartment scene in the first one, when he's like investigating her apartment, it's just hitting on her. Like, just give her a break, you know?
But you're talking about the Sigourney Weaver character?
Yeah.
I did watch a clip, guys, of the second movie. I was trying to find clips of the second movie. And there was, I think it's the climactic scene at the end. I felt like Bill Murray's character needed to be quiet. Like what he's like, it was just like constant going and going and going. And even just watching that clip, I'm going, oh.
Are you talking about like him hitting on Dana? Or do you mean like at the very end when they're like paralyzed and he's like insulting
that whole scene, that whole sequence, even before the bad guy shows up there and paralyzes them, I felt like there was flirting going on as she's holding the baby and whatever. So,
but see, that I buy more because they had a relationship. But it's just like when he goes into the apartment the first time, I'm like, just like, you don't need to be hitting on her 24/7.
For some reason in the first one, and possibly because he's still a new character and whatever, you know, like it seemed like it seemed a little bit more natural. Again, it's still too much. The dude needs to back off, but it seemed a little bit more natural, where I don't know, something about in the second movie, it just seemed like now over. It's like they took something that was cute and like ratcheted it up to like an annoying level. And I think that's where I got started. Like that's what started to put me off on the second movie.
What's interesting is that when we watched them, Elaine, my lovely wife, she now looking at the way we look at films and the way women are projected in films, that in the first film, Sigourney Weaver was just portrayed as almost, I don't know if you use the term, a sex object, or she was, you know, she was sexy and the accountant's name, boy, just dropped on my friend.
Louis Tully.
Louis is the idiot. But in the second film, she's nothing like that whatsoever. She's more professional. She's more straight. She's a mom now, you know, so they made her a little more grown up.
Well, I don't think that's completely fair, because the whole sexiness in the first movie came when she was possessed, and she didn't become possessed in the second movie.
But I'm just saying is that the way that we perceive films now is different. Much like in the first film, they're constantly smoking. Now it's 1983 and that's cool. But in the second film, the smoking was not there. And right now we look at films where if someone smokes, they're the bad guy.
I think it's like I was listening to a rewatch of Kind of Funny. They were talking about Ghostbusters. They were saying that I think Oprah had them all on when they're promoting Ghostbusters 2, and they were talking about the smoking. They're like, well, now we've matured a bit more. We all have kids. We don't want our kids to be smoking. So they toned that down. Because it's just always amazing. Like when I rewatch it, like not only do they smoke a lot, but Ray at one point is working on the car with a cigarette in his mouth. And I'm like, that's I mean,
the only one perfect scene is where Ray is like when he sees the ghost and the cigarette's kind of hanging off of his lip, hanging downwards. And it was a good emotion, like, look. But it's interesting how in 6 years from between the two films that the morals have changed about cigarette smoking in films, and that was toned down or removed.
Yeah, but about the Dana Barrett thing, I don't think she was ever like made to be like, except for when she's possessed, made to be like a sex object. She's like the love interest, and that Peter finds her attractive. But she comes off as really mature. I mean, she's working in an orchestra. So clearly she's intelligent, and they don't. She's not wearing anything that's kind of outlandish or like overly sexy.
Right. The sexy part is just when she's possessed. It's
when she's possessed. Exactly. Can I ask a science question?
Yes.
For Adina, because
science for the science fiction.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, not even I want to get to the proton packs and all the science later. But the thing I have a problem with is I know Egon's not making stuff up. When he says something, it's the truth. But he makes it very clear that they should not buy the building because it will be inadequate for their power needs. It's like a demilitarized zone. He's talking about all these problems. And I'm like, yet they buy it and they don't seem to have any power issues. Is there any workaround from that?
Well, again, one, just simple like plot hole, and two, in the background, we can imagine that, because what happens when you buy a building in real life, you might have to do power upgrades, or you might have to do stuff. When I used to have a retail store, and I had to do power upgrades because my retail store is a paint your own pottery studio, and I had to run 2 large kilns. So from the white shell, the white box that they gave me, the first day that I took possession, I had an electrician come in and upgrade the power to what I needed. So I can believe that just happened off screen.
Okay, well, I'll buy it. It seemed like they didn't have the budget to be like spending all that money.
That's sure.
Well, but they got the mortgages, 3 mortgages. No one's going to lose the house.
But this is true. When I worked my own company, ABI, when we moved in our new location, we had to upgrade to a much more powerful amount of electricity coming in for all the equipment we were going to use. and the city gave us the worst time. You have to do this. You have to prove this. The equipment is in UL. You have to do this. You have to dig a trench. We have to put it was amazing. So, to get it done like that,
it's fiction.
Let's cut to the chase. We'll just cut to the chase is what they kind of do.
Fair enough.
You had to have Dan Aykroyd slide down the hill going, "This is great. Can we stay here tonight? No, we can sleep over." Like a big.
You got to try this poll.
Yes.
Is that the only science question?
No, I have more science questions.
Are you going to ask how proton packs work? Is that
like what are they shooting? How do they work?
No freaking idea.
Would they be able to stand?
This is fantasy
with that much electricity coming out of there. They should be blown backwards.
Fantasy than Trek.
This is way more fantasy than
yes.
This is fantasy, not
and
science.
the fact that
you time travel.
Build them. They could build them at least.
What do you mean
amazing.
That look for? Don't act like this is like an outrageous question.
Well, it's not outrageous. It's not an outrageous question.
No, it's not.
But there's no, at least in a lot of, not every piece of Trek technology and not every piece of science technology has a real world tie-in or explanation. But especially in Trek, a good chunk of it does. In this, that proton pack thing, I don't think there's, shooting out a really janky beam that doesn't harm them. That
But it looks
cool.
Yes, and it's unique. Like
and that's that. I
think some of the until you have to, I just think that some of the good things about this film are the things that are memorable is that they have very memorable things. Ghostbusters costumes or their uniforms or whatever, the backpacks, the electric, whatever they call them, the car, which is as much of the story as we would say the Enterprise is to Star Trek.
That's a little. I don't know. I think that's going a little far.
I'm trying to be positive here. I only have a few things to say, Adina, and you're.
I know. I'm sorry.
All right, you're right. It all sucks.
Maybe you're right.
You're right. I hate
this to compare the two.
No,
I just figure when they start saying things like,
it's not a good compare. That's exactly it. It's on its own. If you just consider Ghostbusters in its own bubble, it's kind of fun and appreciative. But now, if you're going to start to compare it to something a little bit more science fiction in that science fiction scale, then the comparison is not fair. I guess is the best way to say it.
Enterprise is
I feel like I'm
almost
not
a
going to
character.
if I keep arguing this, I'm going to get
the
shut down in the
proton
comments.
Is the flux capacitor of this movie.
That's a great description. Okay,
but
let's
what about
go
they have
with that.
tricorders basically, and that all ectoplasmic entities have the same whatever rate? I'm like, that's kind of like them saying everybody has the same quantum signature if you're in this universe. Maybe not, but I feel like I should just stop. Okay, I apologize, everybody.
No, I guess I have a question. I have a really legitimate question. You guys are much more versed on these films,
okay,
than I am. But have you read or watched anything from any of the actors, the producers, directors, whatever? And I'm thinking more from the point of view of like Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray.
Not about this film, no.
When they were making the original, did they have any inclination that they probably did not expect it to be a mega blockbuster hit, because you hope for that, but you don't really, your fingers are crossed,
right.
But I wonder if there was any point where they said, this is fantastic. This is hilarious. This is totally different than anything out there. This has a shot to be really great and a lot of fun, and a lot of people are going to want to see this movie. Or are they going, boy, this could be a total disaster, guys. This may be our last film we ever make if it doesn't go well. Have you guys read anything about that or read any interviews or anything?
I don't remember reading that they thought they were worried it was going to be a failure. I think they were all surprised. I know Dan Aykroyd, I believe I have to see where he's at right now. But I know for a long time he'd go on talk shows and basically be like, yeah, I believe in ghosts. And he was very much of like more like Ray's character in that, it's plausible based on whatever. But I don't know if they ever felt like the movie was going to be a failure.
Okay.
Or they were worried about it.
you'd have to go back to saying the same thing when you asked all the actors when they made Star Wars, the first film. After it was all done, they went, is this thing going to be a flop, or is it just going to be something that's going to become as big as it ended up being? I don't think they perceived it, but they were lucky that it did work out and it was received very well, and it did go on to create an empire. But that never happened with this. This made a couple of films that followed it, and that's about it.
Well, I feel like they also have the TV show. There was actually, for Nintendo Wii and PlayStation 3 about 10 years ago, they came out with the Ghostbusters, the video game, which was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, and it basically functioned as a Ghostbusters 3.
Oh, interesting.
Where you play like a new recruit, and they're dealing with the fallout of 1 and 2, which I thought was pretty cool. But it's not the same level of Star Wars, of course.
Yeah, and I think today we're all like used to calling things, blockbusters, and what's the next blockbuster going to be, and is this one going to be about, like that's part of how we talk about movies. And there's, I think, expectations for studios to release blockbusters every year. But I think if you go back to the early 80s, the concept of blockbuster was still fairly new.
Interesting.
So there had only been a couple, like Star Wars was one of them. I think this one might have been considered, but and there's only
Indiana
few.
Jones,
right?
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah.
Well, even Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan was one of the biggest money makers of the year.
Right.
If not the. So
my guess would be no, they weren't talking in those terms. Just, is this going to be a good movie? Are we going to make some money? Whatever. I don't think that was a discussion that today. I do believe they have those people, or at least maybe studio execs. Someone has a discussion. Do we think this will be a blockbuster? I don't think they necessarily did back. Not the way we do today.
And we can't forget the impact this film had on toys.
Yeah.
There were toys.
I think I remember seeing toys all over the shelves for years as a kid around Ghostbusters. So I think so it would have been Star Wars really launched that out, right? And Ghostbusters would have capitalized on that market then. But I remember the toys just being everywhere. I remember all my friends having the toys. I just, it just was gaga over that. And they had some marketable stuff, they really did.
No, my daughters had a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. They had a Slimer. They were, plastic toys, and they play with them and they had fun with them. And you could buy a model of, or you could buy a kit or whatever of Echo One. So it did have its marketing. It did have, they recognize it after the fact that, okay, let's start selling these things. I don't know how long after the film was released that all the merchandise started to come out. I don't recall that at all. So,
and they're still making new stuff. Like there's still new toy lines, and I know Hasbro came up with like a proton pack recently, which was based off of the Afterlife proton pack. So they're still doing well.
And you still see the cosplayers. I went to a GalaxyCon in Columbus, Ohio last year now, I guess. Whoa, holy cow. And there was fantastic cosplayers wearing Ghostbuster gear. Fantastic. So it's still impacting that realm. There's plenty of cosplayers doing it in Halloween costumes. I mean, kids wearing it, So, and I actually kind of feel like, as I think about it, in the last few years, and maybe it's because of the two newer movies, there's a whole new generation of people seeing the original Ghostbusters probably for the first time.
And I believe there's another Ghostbusters movie coming out as well.
Well, I should look that up. I remember
reading something about that.
Okay.
One to follow up after Afterlife.
Well, that'd be cool. Yeah. So going back to the film, what were some of your favorite lines? I know because off air, Steve and I were going back and forth with a lot of Louis Tully dialogue.
Well, I can tell you that one of my coworkers at Children's Hospital, her favorite line is "Mother Puss Bucket."
Yeah,
when she's frustrated, and I don't know. It just or the line was, when someone asks if you're a god, you say yes. Those are the gems that came out of the film. It really is. That's what I guess what makes a good film or makes a memorable film is that we recite dialogue from it, and it becomes part of our lexicon of talking.
Yeah. Like one of my friends in university, and I don't know how many people like on our floor heard us, but one of my buddies would always come into my room, and then whenever he'd leave, he'd walk down the hall and he'd be like, I'm gonna take a shower. So we just started doing this back and forth where anytime one of us left, we'd walk down and be like, all right, I'm gonna take a shower, just because we loved quoting that. I don't know if anyone else got the reference on our floor, but just like, yeah, little bits of dialogue like that I just thought were perfect. And I won't use the swear word, but one thing I love, and it just, Dina can jump in here because of the New York factor, but it seems like I could buy this happening in New York, where Louis Tully, possessed, starts talking to this guy's horse. So he's like I don't know what you call them. What's the term?
Oh, hold on.
Just the police? I mean, like
No.
This
it was just like
horse
a
and
carriage.
Horse and carriage.
Handsome carriage, right?
Handsome carriage. Yes.
And so he's talking to the horse, and then the guy's like, "Hey, you got to talk to me. I make the deals." And then he growls at him. Eyes glow red. You think anyone in their right mind would be terrified, but he's just like, "What an a-hole." And I'm like, "That's perfect. What a great response."
But that's a New Yorker way of doing it.
And it feels
things.
like in my head, it feels like in New York.
It is. So yeah, New Yorkers get a weird rap because they people think that they're mean, and they're really not mean. They're just direct. They're always in a hurry. Okay. So it comes off that way. But yes, I think people in New York are sensitized or desensitized to weirdness. So a lot of things can happen and people won't blink at it or think it's like unusual. So yeah, no, it definitely, I mean, yes, it felt like, and again, I grew up on Long Island outside the city. And so watching a movie that was taking place in the city felt, nothing felt un-New York about it, I guess.
Well, I can say this. Oh, go ahead, Chris. I was going to say, Chris, I think Garrison Keillor best qualified about the New York attitude when he said one time on his broadcast, "Why are New Yorkers so angry?" And the reply was, because the light at the end of the tunnel is New Jersey.
Oh, jeez.
That's pretty good.
That's a good one.
Garrison Keillor is an American treasure.
He really is.
But that was another thing, that made the second movie, when I rewatched it, a little hard to watch because, the city has changed a lot since the 1980s. And it's partly because, again, people don't smoke the way they used to. All these things. But really, the city was a very different place in like the 70s and 80s than it is today. It's a lot. In some ways, not, I'm gonna say nicer. And I feel like watching that movie kind of like bringing back like the 1980s New York. I'm okay leaving the 1980s New York in the past because today, New York City today is awesome.
Yeah, because the two things about that, like one, Dill thought it was hysterical, and it always kind of makes me laugh, but how hysterical, or thought it was hysterical, how quickly the conversation between the police officer and Walter Peck escalates when Walter Peck's like, "Don't worry, if he does that again,
your job. I'll do mine.
You don't tell me how to do my pencil neck." And she loved how quickly that escalated. And then there's the one of my favorite lines from Ghostbusters 2, where it's like, "It's every New Yorker's God-given right to treat each other like dirt." And I'm like, I love that.
I didn't really like that line.
Yeah, no,
because people aren't really like that.
But was that accurate to the time, or is that just because I don't know if they're really from New York,
probably,
or how
that's a stereotype.
It's a stereotype. They're making fun, but for some reason that struck me. And again, I get that it's supposed to be a comedy and they're making fun, but for some reason that one I didn't find funny, and maybe because I think other people are thinking it's real and not funny, and that's why I'm like, that's why I didn't like that one.
Well, I sent you all a trailer for a film that came out in the 1960s that I've always loved, which was called "What's So Bad About Feeling Good?" Whereas a virus infects the population of New York and they become nice. And they're like, "This is an epidemic. We can't let this happen. Every New Yorker has a God-given right to be angry." And they have to defeat the virus because you can't have nice New Yorkers. And that was the portrayal that everyone always had about New Yorkers. But you're right, Adina. It's different now. If you go to New York now, it's different.
But it was always, again, it's a little bit more there is one like meme cartoon I saw a couple years ago that to me was perfect. It was kind of like the difference between New York and like California, or and specifically New York City, and like LA or somewhere. And it was I'm trying to get the essence of it. It was like the person from California, they had an issue with whatever interaction, but they kept it in their head and they had a nice smile on their face.
Mm-hmm.
Where the New Yorker was whatever was in their head was coming out.
Mm.
And to me, in my experiences, having been like I said, Long Island, but associated with the city, and all my family and friends are up there, and interacting with a lot of folks from California, present company accepted, that felt very true to me.
Well, there is a line in the film where Bill Murray says to the evil overlord, "You could be living the great life in the beautiful San Fernando Valley."
Yeah.
When I saw that movie, and I went, "They're talking about our place where we live."
But so are they from California, like most of like Bill Murray and the gang? Because I just wonder,
I think so.
how much if some of them are from New York. So I feel like if you're from New York and you're making that joke,
think
it's
they're
like
from Chicago, I believe.
Oh, you might be. Yes,
I believe because they were with
Dan
Second
Aykroyd
City.
is.
He's from Chicago. Yeah. I don't know about.
Yeah, Bill Murray. I'm looking up on Wikipedia. It looks like Bill Murray was too. That would explain. But the thing is, I would think, and so they were probably, again, trying to playfully make fun of New Yorkers and build on the stereotypes because, again, they Saturday Night Live and all these things. But like I said, that one, at least today, fell a little flat. For me,
hey, have you been to Chicago? They can be a little ornery as well there, too.
That's what I hear. But no, I've never been.
Not
Any
as bad
other?
as, yeah.
We have
I
better
just
pizza.
realized my mic has been muted for quite some time, and I've been laughing and talking. I don't think you guys could hear me.
We did not.
No.
We were thought you were
Catch us up. What?
I'm very sad. I did it again. I do that every now and then.
So any other favorite lines? Because I know we were going back and forth a little bit.
Well,
how about you, Brian? Anyone stand out?
No.
Okay. No, nothing. Not even.
Nope.
What about the silly? All I got is the salicylic acid from the name brand. Or I think that's how he says it.
See, he's laughing. See, he's laughing because
the movie's funny. I thought the movie was funny, but I wasn't watching it. It has to, like, for me to remember quotes of a film, it has to be like really like, you guys have sat on these films for a while, and they're true. Part of nostalgia.
Yeah.
There's some nostalgia for you. For me, I'm watching it going, I can't wait till this is over. Actually,
now, I have to tell you a cute little story that is about when my daughter Stephanie first saw Ghostbusters. Now she was less than 10, and it's the scene where Ray is lying in his cot. The ghost appears overhead, and you see his pants unbuttoned and the zipper come down, and he makes that face. And my daughter says, "What's she doing to him, Daddy?" And I said, "She's tickling him." "Oh, okay."
Good. That's a good answer, because I was even saying to Dill, I'm like, we got to come up with a plan when we inevitably we're going to watch this when we have kids. We're going to have, in some ways, going to ask.
What's he doing? What's she doing to him?
Show him the made-for-TV version. That's all you got to do.
And this is why I don't, because again, when I was a kid, I watched these. I have a younger brother. He watched these, and a lot of these things you just kind of bypass, and you didn't really like. Oh, when you get older, you're like, I can't believe I missed that. And it's almost kind of fun to basically be like, to like grow up and get in on the joke.
Yeah, so, I think though, to push back on that a little bit, I think we're living in a different generation. I think kids know a lot more. Yeah, I think kids know a lot more because of the internet.
Maybe
we knew as kids, and they know more than we know. They know, probably. So,
but I've always let my kids. I've always let my kids watch a movie like if I had seen it at their age.
Right.
So new movies I don't necessarily do, but old movies like if I had watched it at their age, I just let them watch it, and I don't worry about it. And I don't worry about it. There are things like that in it. I just if they ask, I'll make up something.
Right. And sometimes it's a good learning moment, and sometimes you have to come up with something. Yeah. And sometimes if you make too big a deal about it,
Yeah,
That's right.
So well, I just ignore it unless they mention something. The biggest
You
thing
go
that
to
Frank,
bed going, I'm an idiot. Why did
well, and I'll say the biggest thing that Frank has ever mentioned on old movies is related to the smoking, and
Oh,
because
really?
because he's grown up knowing that
Yeah.
we don't smoke, no one's
Mhm.
and no one in our lives, like smokes, and
Oh,
and
interesting.
and he also grew up knowing the person he's named after died of lung cancer,
Mhm.
which is one of the reasons I never smoked, because I grew up knowing I didn't get to know my grandfather because he died when I was a baby because of
Yeah.
lung cancer. So
Mhm.
he said, like, oh my God, why are they smoking? Oh my God, they're smoking. Like, I can't believe they're smoking.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
That kind of
fascinating.
thing. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Now,
it's
what
just,
did Frank think about like the special effects? Because you mentioned that before with some older films. Harder for your son, who's how old?
now 13.
13. That's
Mhm.
incredible.
Okay.
To sometimes that the oldness of films, the
Mhm.
special effects that are cheesy compared to today's stand, maybe fantastic when it came out, but harder for him. What did he think? What has he thought about it?
He liked it. I think he got that this was not like because I think he understood that this was a little bit more on the comedy-ish side, and then that lessens the desire
Yeah,
and need
you're
for
right.
Mhm.
strong special effects. So I don't think it bothered him on this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
To me, the best special effects scene in the whole film was not the stop motion dogs. That was kind of cheesy a little bit. It was the eggs popping and frying. That was done
Yeah.
so well. I mean, I don't know how they did it,
I was trying to figure that out
but
again. I was
it
like, wait,
was
how did
truly amazing to have them pop up and then they start frying. And this is back to where you had to do all this manually. This was
Mhm.
Yeah,
this
right.
was not
so
digital. This was live action, and I think that's amazing.
I can't think of the special effects. I don't know if it wasn't Dan Curry, but there's another guy who's heavily involved in special effects in Star Trek, and he was on the Shuttle Pod show, and he was talking about how he worked on Ghostbusters and all the stuff they had to do when trying to create the Marshmallow Man, and that was just like I didn't
Interesting.
understand how he did it, but it just like it sounded painful to me.
Stop motion animation has to be one of the most painful.
Yeah.
You got to be stinking
You have to have
passionate about the
patience.
outcome.
But so now I wanted to like ask about the scariness. Did any we talked about it off air, but did any of you find it scary at all or creepy in moments?
No.
So when I recently rewatched Ghostbusters 2, I did it with my 5-year-old.
Mhm.
And there was one scene that came on. I was worried that he was like, when there was like the image of like the heads on spikes.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that's actually pretty
So
creepy.
for a minute, I looked at him to see if I was getting a reaction. I was like, are you okay? Is it scary for you? And he's like, no. But he's Raymond is really weird. So one, ever since he was born, he like loves Halloween motif.
Okay.
So like, I seriously, he talks about vampires, not vampires, zombies and skeletons and ghosts, like all year round. Halloween stuff. We get Halloween stuff all year round. We've been listening to the Ghostbusters theme for like a year. I don't remember where he first heard it, but he asks for it all the time when we're driving and listening to music.
Mhm.
So yeah, so he didn't find it scary at all. That was the one part I was kind of worried about. I was kind of also worried about the major bag. No, he was fine.
Oh,
Is it
Ego.
because you've inspired, given him the reality that zombies don't exist, monsters don't exist, ghosts don't exist, that he
Maybe.
understands that, like when my daughter was young, when we watched Godzilla, we would joke, I would say, hey, look, see, you can see the zipper in the back of the suit, just to take the edge off of it. So it's not scary. So is it because you've given him reality to know what is reality versus what is fantasy, that he's not afraid of them?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. It's hard to know what goes through their little like brains. And again, I don't know why he's so fascinated with the motif year round.
Well,
like either. I find that like just. I mean, it's cool. Yeah, we don't discourage it, but I'm also like, he didn't get it from. I mean, I like Halloween stuff, but I also am not talking about Halloween in April unless he's the one who brings it up.
Okay. Well, I remember someone
My
on
kids
NPR.
talk about Christmas all year long.
Dad,
I think for
better.
Christmas, I'm going to ask.
But I think one guy once explained on NPR about why children like dinosaurs, and he said because they're big, they're frightening, and they're dead. and they know they don't exist. So you can still like them, but not fear them because you know they don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
See, this is where I'm surprised because I know it's not like oh, this is not considered to be a terrifying movie because it's Ghostbusters, it's a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are moments where I'm like, this is actually genuinely creepy to me. And as a kid, like the possession stuff freaked me out. And I feel like even today watching it, it's like, yeah, it's like Dylan and I were talking. It's like, yeah, that scene is still creepy when she's possessed and Peter's in the room. But I feel like the only reason it's not scary is because Peter has the Animal Wild Kingdom line and he's making all these comments. But even I feel like he's doing that because he's genuinely scared. And I feel like that, and then the scene where the arms come out to grab Dana is a little bit creepy.
Oh, out of the Barca Lounger.
Yeah, and then in the second one,
yeah.
the scene where Janusz is flying at her as a ghost in ghost form.
Oh yeah, like
from the distance is kind of creepy. So I feel like it's not scary, but they do a good job of making it unsettling, at least for me.
A boo joke, or not a boo joke, but a boo surprise is always going to get you. I mean, it's gonna you're not going to be prepared for it and it happen. And of course, we've seen it so many times it doesn't have the same effect. But if someone's watching it for the first time, that would get them. Probably.
Yeah, even like the fur coat from the second one is a little bit like, that's
I
a little bit.
That was funny. I thought
that
was hilarious.
Like, what about, because you mentioned dinosaurs? Did you not like the police station? Was it the big dinosaur or the little dinosaur? Oh, it was the skeleton. Sorry, what was chasing you in the park? The park bench was chasing you?
Oh, yeah.
Titanic just arrived.
Yeah.
Better late than never.
Mm-hmm.
No?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
I think you're like most. I think you're like like most people. Like I think, just like if you look even at Rotten Tomatoes, I think it has like a 55% or something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like
I think the second movie or the first one,
the second one.
Okay.
Like I think the first one is like, I think Time Magazine or someone put it in like the top 40 of 100 greatest comedies, but then the second one just tanked.
Okay.
And people were kind of like, that was disappointing.
Maybe because go ahead, Adina.
I was going to say, I mean, like the plot part was also a little more convoluted than the first one too, and it was a little, I don't know, it was a little convoluted and more complicated than the first one. I felt like the first one was a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah,
that was part of it.
Yeah. I mean, they had to create a really bad guy because you had one in the first one, which is the Minx. But really this one, they had to create something that could possess someone.
I am Zool.
Yeah. That great voice.
This is, I don't know if my wife has ever seen this film or not, but my wife has a hilarious thing she does in watching films of this nature that are far out there, and it could be anything, but we were watching a movie called Monster Trucks recently, okay, which you guys should see on Netflix before it goes off. It's, I want to say 2016, Rob Lowe, Danny Glover. It's a family film. It totally bombed, but it's got a cult following now. A lot of people are saying it's actually pretty charming, and a lot of people are watching it saying this is an enjoyable. Look it up. It's great. Your kids will love it. But the whole premise is they're digging for oil, and they find these monsters down deep in the earth, and they want to destroy them all or poison them. And then so these teenagers rally to save these monsters, and they actually crawl up inside monster trucks that are raised, and they power the monster trucks, and there's all this driving around action. It's totally absurd and crazy. Totally charming and kind of cute movie.
Would this be appropriate for a 5-year-old?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, because my grandson loves monster trucks.
Yeah, and so anyways, we're towards the end of the movie, and these monsters are powering these monster trucks. They're getting chased by these bad guys, Rob Lowe's organization, and then something happens, and my wife goes, "Oh, come on, that's ridiculous." And I could not, she does this with a lot of movies. I'm like, wait a minute, you just sat through their monsters.
Ridiculous on top of ridiculous. And now it's ridiculous. The whole thing
is crazy. And now all of a sudden this one thing happens and you go, oh, really?
Well,
like that's what makes you cross the line of where you can't believe it anymore. And so I think like a film like Ghostbusters, I'm trying to be positive about Ghostbusters, is I think that there's a level of just fun in it that makes people suspend their disbelief as they're watching a film like this to enjoy it and appreciate it. So
yeah, it's funny because I can suspend my disbelief like for the ghost stuff, and that's like because it's fantastical, it's ghosts. But when they start dealing with the EPA, I'm like, how are they like? I know they mentioned getting sued in the second one, but like, how is what's the hotel called? Why am I not thinking it's Sedgwick Hotel that they go to in the first one where they have their first job?
Oh, right.
I like how are they not like? I know you got rid of the ghost, but you basically destroyed our place, and now we've lost all this business because this lady who was trying to hold a reception there, we couldn't do that. Like that's where I find it's difficult sometimes with that aspect is how are they not in more trouble? Like, like even to
they're destroying everything,
and they become famous after that. Yeah. After that happens, you have the whole sequence of them becoming the toast of the town King. On TV shows, montage, commercials, everything.
So I think the problem there is, and again, this might be why, your wife is like, oh my gosh, that was ridiculous, 2 hours in or whatever, is just sometimes a movie will break its own self-consistency. And that's the problem is you have to stay self-consistent with whatever you set up, and you can stray from that. And that's why I think people then like lose it or break out.
That's a good insight. Yeah. Also, I just want to make a quick comment. Possession, the idea of possession, ghostly demon possession, is one of the most frightening things.
Yeah, definitely.
You can do or talk about or portray on film. I think so. I think it's.
You ever see Saw?
I'm not watching Saw.
No. I do not like torture films, and I have seen like 5 minutes of that movie, and no.
I saw the honest trailer, and I'm like, I can't even watch this.
I think in real life, because the reason why I don't find any of the possession stuff scary, because in real life, I don't actually believe that anything like that is possibly even remotely possible. Where a movie like Saw, I feel like those things are technically possible, which is why movies like Saw, I've watched the first one, I've not watched the second one, and I can't watch those movies or anything like that, because to me, that's too freaky, because that's realistic.
Torture is possible. Yes. To inflict on someone, yes, that's very possible.
So possession, it could be like again, Poltergeist and The Exorcist. None of those movies really freak me out because I don't. To me, they're more again fantasy. I feel like I perceive them as complete fantasy.
And I got a story for you when we're done recording. Well, it's another time, but it's a long story.
I'm going to just say that when The Exorcist came out, people were terrified, frightened, horrified, and I knew someone who was working for the production company, and his job was to plant lies about things that happened in the theater where, when she vomits up the green slime, everybody in the theater just started to vomit. And it never happened, but they were doing these things to promote it.
With Ghostbusters or
no,
for
The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. Okay.
The Exorcist. Okay. And true funny story. I was working at 31 Flavors, and this car pulls up, and a little girl comes out, and she walks into the store, and she orders some ice cream. And I said, "Excuse me, but were you in The Exorcist?" She said, "Yep, that was me." And she walks out of the restaurant. I went, "Wow, she wasn't affected by the film."
I'm not saying Exorcist.
Everybody you have a restaurant story for every actor in Hollywood, I bet.
When did Paul Rudd go to your 31 Flavors?
But I will tell you that William Wyndon, Commander Decker, came to my 31 Flavors one time, and it was really cool to see him.
Did he ask if he? I just want him to be like,
no.
I want this.
But he actually was so messed up. He was dressed up so he looked like Commander Decker during the bad moments. So anyway, but yes, that's how the movie was supposed to terrify the concept of possession, but even the girl who played the role wasn't affected by it, which is kind of funny.
Because it was a movie. It was a fantasy movie.
Oh, right. So I'm really slow. I thought you meant you went to the movie theater, saw the movie, started your shift, and then someone from the theater came in. And
no. It came to my 31 Flavors that I worked at.
That's where I went with the story.
Hey, one time one guy came in and said, "I want to order a pistachio almond fudge shake, which is green ice cream with chocolate in it." And he swirled it all up. And I said, "Here's your Reagan juice malt." And he went, I'm out of here. And he walked out the door because the movie was so big at that time. But anyway, what am I going?
Well,
We're on a super
I don't know.
transit.
I love this super
Tangent.
tangent.
By
like
the way,
crazy.
you can tell 31 flavor stories anytime you want to on this podcast, Steve. I will never complain.
I have too many of them. I have too many of them.
I also want it noted that you have mentioned something related to National Public Radio at least twice on this particular episode. So
I do. I always used to listen to it every day when I came home from work. Dun 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 bum bum
Yep.
bum.
yeah,
Okay,
Chris
enough
has
of that.
lost all control of this podcast.
We have. Maybe we need to wrap it up, or are
It's
we
our
still
fault. It's
got
our
more to
fault,
talk
though.
about?
Do we have any like final thoughts with the film that I think that Brian loves? We're going to now add this to the
you know
Brian's
what?
favorite film.
I will
of all time?
start since you've mentioned my name, Chris. I appreciate it, buddy. I get why people like this film. I totally do. This is not my cup of tea. But I will allow you guys the pleasure of enjoying it however many times you're going to watch it in the future. I am done at number 1, though.
And to quote Peter Venkman, I will, mister.
Okay. I pass the torch comment along.
Okay.
Pass the comment torch to someone else.
I will say this. It is become part of movie lore. It's something that people go back to. It's something that people are going to show their children and their grandchildren and so on, because it is a unique film, and that's where it's got its legs.
And I'd say something very similar to anyone who's not seen the original Ghostbusters movie. If you're interested in just pop culture history and movie lore and all that, this is definitely a film worth watching. Again, I don't think it holds up super well because of the smoking, because New York is a little bit different these days. You know, I think there's a lot of things it doesn't hold up, but I think it's worth watching for like that historical education on film and pop culture. And it's fun. It's funny, but you can stop at the first movie.
Okay.
I understand. I would say whether you like, I think Adina's right that whether you think it holds up or doesn't hold up, I think if you're a student of film and you want to learn more about film, then you have to watch it because it's iconic. It's great for comedy, but I could see it not holding up. I still personally think it does. But of course, I've seen it a million times. But just by watching that movie, like getting her opinion on someone who's very critical, it's like it's good to see that she felt like it did. And I will defend Ghostbusters 2 till the day that I die. I know it's not the best film. I know it's not a popular opinion, but I love that. And I watch it all the time.
I will also. I'm sorry, Brian.
That's
go
your
ahead.
prerogative, Chris. But I will not be joining that picket line with you, friend.
That's fine.
And it's
That's okay.
not just a student being a student of film, but a student of pop culture.
Yes.
I think that's
fair point.
that's
That's what you said. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I apologize.
But I will also be there with you, Chris, defending Ghostbusters 2, because I still love it.
We could maybe get one more
Solidarity right
person.
here.
We're together on that one.
Yeah. Steve,
right.
Chris, and Dill.
Yeah, she'll be there. Right? She actually loved the second one, so I'm like,
Cool,
this is amazing. This is like the
Good
third
for her.
person in the
you
world
guys
who
are made
actually
for
likes
each
it.
other.
You
Yeah.
are.
Right. She'll watch Star Trek when you're not around.
I mean, she puts on Star Trek at night. Like she starts with
Crazy.
end of season 5 of DS9, and we usually, if it's like a weekend, we'll get to Jadzia's death, which is horrible. But we'll usually end up around there. We're like, okay, now we can turn it off. But
And folks, we've
It's
been able
wild.
to slip in a Star Trek reference in tonight's episode. Thank
We
you very
have.
much.
Of course we did.
every
We
time.
always do.
Yes.
All right.
But thank you, everyone, for a very fun discussion. It's always fun. Like, obviously, it's great when we all agree and we're all like, we all love this thing. But I think it's especially interesting when we don't all see eye to eye and there's someone on our group who doesn't like a film that, you know, some of us love, and it makes it more interesting. But thank you for that. Thank you for listening. And of course, I have to shout out Trek Geeks, which we are now a part of, which is pretty cool. And we're not the only show on Trek Geeks. There's this other show called Sci-Fi Sisters is one, which you should check out. And there's a ton of other shows. So yeah, listen to all of them. And if you want to interact with us, check us out on Facebook. Send in your comments. Maybe you're outraged by what I said today, or you have some opinions of your own that you know aren't popular. Let us know. We'd love to hear from you.